Thank you so much for taking the time to join my internal communication series that I run on my blog. As you know, this is a series that interviews thought leaders on employee communications and understands their perspectives. So, really delighted to have you on the show. Before we begin, it'll be great if you could introduce yourself to our viewers.
Firstly, Anishu, it's a little overwhelming to be called a thought leader, but I will take that as something that I will aspire to be always. You truly are the thought leader in this space, and you are generously contributing to its content across geographies. In terms of my own self, I am Arnab Choudhury. Currently working with Standard Chartered as the global lead for information and cybersecurity. A large chunk of that revolves around the internal piece um, and how we move things forward. Um, I have been in the communications profession for about 16 years now, having started with CNBC, having worked in big, large public relations firms like Edelman and Ogilvy, and before moving in-house with uh, a couple of firms and currently with Standard Chartered, as I mentioned. Um, and outside of work, and I don't like to define myself just by my work, and just like as an internal communicator, I feel truly rounded personality is what you do as outside of work. And outside of work, it's essentially all about my sons, and I have twin sons, and
Okay.
I, I jokingly call um, that I'm the sidekick to my superhuman wife and the CTO for my twin sons. However, that is in retirement right now due to COVID, and the CTO refers to Chief Travel Officer. So I drop them, pick them up, do whatever. So that forms a large chunk of my work as well. So, in a nutshell, that's who I am.
Fantastic. And I know that you give back to the communications community through the Ph.D. and you're a co-chair. So any thoughts on that as to how that's going?
I didn't want to bring that up, but it yes, I have just recently started as the Singapore chair for the Asia Pacific Association of Communications Director. It's one of the oldest running in-house communicators platform and network. Over 400 members across
Mm.
Asia Pacific, trying to promote all that to internal communicators. We have been running a whole bunch of series of webinars around what is important to communicators. We are also trying to run a sustainable communications program, which brings both our agencies,
Mhm.
communicators, seasoned in-house communicators, along with emerging talent to
Right.
give NGOs and social enterprises. So yeah, there's a lot of work going out around that, um,
Great.
which is also exciting.
Fantastic. So Arnab, why don't you tell me what's your definition of internal communication? What does it mean to you?
Um, I've long held the belief that uh, truly the power lies in internal communication, and more so now than ever before. Um, in my mind, the definition of internal communications would be um, connecting uh, connecting our clients, colleagues, and communities through human and authentic storytelling,
Mhm.
and bringing them together towards a common purpose is what internal communication is all about. If done right,
Mm.
it builds trust in the organization and
Mm.
amongst each other,
Got it.
foundational to the reputation of any firm. That's how I
Fan-
is international internal communications.
Fantastic. And how does it get practiced in your particular organization? Because I know that you handle the risk and information security, which is quite a unique area to manage internal comms. Usually, it's not a focused attention. It doesn't get so much attention.
Well, it is an important bit of, I mean, increasingly people are realizing the importance of it. The ransomware, the malware,
Yeah,
all of this has been there uh, for a very, very long time.
got
It's
it.
um, that a lot of companies are waking up to the realities of the tech led,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
therefore putting their efforts. But uh, the practice within my current organization or elsewhere, I think, is all about, especially in my current place of work, is all about making it human and personal in
mm,
storytelling. So
got it.
we try to keep it simple,
Mm,
and the focus, the point around risk and internal communication focus around information cyber security in particular, is that it's good to have people. I'm not an information cybersecurity professional,
right,
so I can ask a very simple questions like, I don't understand that, can you explain that to me?
right.
Helps bring a certain level of complex ideas
Mm,
into much easier to understand, because I don't understand,
got it.
to break it down and make it simplified to all of my employees, which is the real challenge that
Right.
any is facing. Because the tech guys will know what they need to do, but the
Mm,
is one person sitting in the office who doesn't understand all the good things that you are trying to promote, all the
right.
good, and that's where I think we are focusing our efforts on.
Fantastic. And if you could share an example or a campaign or an initiative that you are really proud of, which made an impact, and if you could share how you went about it.
I the There are lots of, it's difficult to pinpoint one, but the one that really makes sense, and because I know this is going to be viewed by other people as well, and they're really looking for an interesting story. The one that I think makes for a interesting conversation is conduct is
Hmm.
an extremely important subject in any firm, but
Right.
but infinitely more so in a regulated banking environment.
Got it.
The usual approach is we look at con- having talking heads, like
Yeah.
they're speaking to people about what's right, what's wrong,
Yeah.
or using animation. Uh, when I was asked to do it as part of Standard Chartered has a large retail presence, and all our bank employees go out and meet clients. So
Mm.
conduct, therefore, is super critical,
Got it.
both from how you conduct your business to your
Mm.
contact with the actual client.
Got it. Mm.
Um, so I was actually watching a TED talk
Hmm.
by Sir Ken Robinson. He's an
Hmm.
phenomenal and funny person, uh,
Mm.
able to hold attention and grab attention. In one of his speeches, he was talking about how kids take a go at anything, whether
Mm.
they answer or they're not. And
Right.
it's a reflection of conduct in any organization, in most organizations, I would say.
Mm.
90% of the people are not going into office thinking they're going to be to they will be doing some misconduct today. It's
Exactly.
basically someone very wise to me told me in the bank that it is a coping mechanism. There are so
Mm.
many that you need to do, and some
Mm.
falls through the crack,
Yeah.
and it's about reinforcing those principles. So
Right.
as part of that TED talk and this advice to me, I realized that there was an element where I could bring this together. And that
Mm.
was, I said at the beginning of this call, I have my two sons, right?
Mm.
Um, so they were young at the point of time, and they're about 9 or so. And I realized they say exactly how they feel.
Right.
So I use that as a concept to to get my employee kids uh, on a video series where I ask them some very simple questions around their conduct. What would they do, for example, what would they do if they saw someone making poor choices?
Right.
Some of their answers were absolutely stunning. I mean, way beyond their age of maturity and all of that. But some were ridiculous, which made it extremely amazing. Some said, like, for example, said, I will inform the teacher. The other guy, another guy said that I will, I will say, you shouldn't be doing that, and I have my eyes on you. You know, and so when you put all of this together and you share that with the audience, one thing it does is it breaks through the clutter of
Yeah.
business heads talking to you or
Yeah.
that you are seeing, or infographics for that matter,
Oh,
and makes it very real and personal. Because when
right.
saying it, uh, you see how, and we didn't edit it, we didn't do anything, we just took it as is and presented it. And this approach opened the eyes of most employees in the bank that when we were kid, we already knew the right answers. It's only when
Right.
we grew up, we are thinking so much about what's the right thing to do. So
Exactly.
it's a great way in which to promote good
Right.
example to which,
Fantastic. Yeah, it's a great idea and a great campaign. I'm sure it must have been well received. So, what according to you is the biggest challenge that internal communicators face?
um, I think the challenge is always going to be um, about making things easy to understand, the complexity of businesses, and the timeliness of things, especially
Right.
now with COVID. Situations change quite dramatically,
Right.
and your ability to communicate in a timely fashion,
Hmm.
way which comforts and provides trust,
Hmm.
and in a transparent way. If you don't know the answers, don't try to guess the answers for your employees. They're smarter than that.
Right.
I think uh, Seth Goodwin,
Hmm.
Seth Gooden, he has made a very interesting comment where he said that if you um, think of the think of employees not as stupid people, but trust their cleverness.
Hmm.
And I think if you are transparent, honest, and and timely,
Hmm.
helps making sure that that communication happens in the right way. And
Fantastic.
I think that is an important element. But the challenge that you have is that we are being bombarded on a regular basis with more and more information.
Hmm.
Having hold of that attention
Yeah.
is probably the biggest element that we need to focus on, as well as
Got
much
it.
being transparent, timely, and honest in our communications.
Fantastic. And related to that, what do you think is the biggest opportunity you see at this stage?
Um, I would say it kind of mirrors what I just mentioned. Being able to communicate in a way where all of this is timely, transparent, honest, uh, is an opportunity to build trust.
Hmm.
And where we are able to do that, this probably is perhaps the best time. And I have seen this, especially with all the things that we are seeing as a result of the situation escalating in the US,
Right.
brands coming out in support of inclusion, Black Lives Matter. is an important dialogue that was always there.
Mm.
But now, because of the groundswell,
Mm.
is making brands really relook at their and that, in my mind, is the biggest opportunity for internal comms.
Mm.
It's, in a way, I think, also a trend that we might
Mm.
um, address,
Mm.
where I think the call is coming from within the house,
Mm.
where employees are telling uh, em- their employers what
Mm.
to expect from them,
Mm.
which wasn't the case a couple of years back.
Right.
With Facebook being
Yeah.
by a virtual a walkout,
Mm.
even during uh, a whole bunch of other uh, companies facing rising amounts of employee activism, there is
Mm.
this potential that whatever is happening inside the policies and decisions you take inside
Right.
the, has an equal and perhaps even bigger impact externally now.
Got it. Got it.
So
Fantastic. Yeah, and that's a great point, and I love the fact about employee activism. And you're right; it's becoming a trend these days. So there is always this thought that internal communication doesn't really have a seat at the table. You need to fight your case. So, what are the ways in which internal communicators can add more value to the business?
I, I mean, if it was a couple of years back, I would agree with you that that people need to fight for a seat at the table. But I think increasingly um, there is a growing recognition. The number of CCOs in the world have increased.
Hmm.
The number of people in my organization, the person who leads our communications function sits with our management team.
Got it.
So just, I mean, change comes slowly,
Hmm.
never as fast as you want it to be, but it is happening.
Got it.
The green shoots of progress are apparent if you are
Hmm.
keeping track.
Right.
Um, at the same time, I think we shouldn't be complacent
Hmm.
about the need to keep pushing the boundaries,
Right.
and this stems from how we how we create business impact and how we
Hmm.
communicate that to our leaders.
Right.
To them, it is also important just not to have nice to have messages,
Right.
but that impacting their shifting their business forward.
Got it.
That is an important bit. Not every communicator, in my opinion, works
Hmm.
to agenda. That is
Hmm.
an equally important agenda to work towards. Then
Right.
you people who will champion you in the business. So it's a two-way street. You can't
Interesting.
only expect. You need to do something to make it work.
Fantastic. That's a great point you made. And related to that, what do you think are some of the key skills internal communicators must have?
I, I'm not an expert, as I have said. I'm not a thought leader, as you have pointed out. But I think I can only give from my perspective and my experience, and what I think is important and has helped me in my career
Hmm.
be useful for others or may not. And it's not exhaustive. Um, I think the most important thing is being self-aware.
Hmm.
uh, it's probably ranks number one in my list of priorities or strengths that you
Hmm.
be aware of, because how you respond to people, how you manage
Hmm.
conflict, what
Hmm.
inspires, what drives you, what
Hmm.
stresses you, what
Hmm.
defeats you, all of
Hmm.
those things are important that you know,
Hmm.
and know it so that when you're experiencing it, you're not
Right.
reacting to the situation,
Got it.
being mature about it.
Right.
So having that
Mm.
is probably, I think, the most important. The
Mm.
next bit is being, I would say, having being flexible or
Mm.
agile in
Right.
scheme of things, because right now, um, complexity
Mm.
and certainty. Complexity is given,
Mm.
certainty is not given
Mm.
in anything that we are doing.
Right.
Look at the COVID situation. We don't know what's going to happen, how we will come out.
Right.
How, if we are able to keep that in mind and continue to be vulnerable,
Mm.
that we don't have all the answers,
Right.
and we will work towards that answer. But here's the answer we have as of now.
Right.
Being that flexible
Mm.
personality, I don't
Mm.
have answers, but I'm willing to learn from you, is an
Got it.
important skill. And the third most important, as
Mm.
in my mind, is being business literate. What I mean
Mm.
by that is,
Mm.
if every communicator is a good communicator.
Mm.
Yeah, I believe that every communicator is good. It's when it's relative to something else is when
Mm.
you are better or worse.
Right.
Makes the difference, right?
Got it.
That truly establishes the person or brings that person down.
Mm.
And in that perspective, I think the important bit here is to speak, firstly, to understand how businesses actually work. I have met
Mm.
a communication person who are just doing communications but don't really know how their entire business functions.
Mm.
That is important. Being close to the business, understanding what matters to them.
Right.
What does your business leader truly want? If
Mm.
is we want to do XYZ, but is
Right.
it really the underlying reason for doing XYZ? And having to being able to understand that and speak the language of your business leaders, have
Mm.
to also push forward both
Right.
your business as well as yourself in the internal communications profession.
Great. Great. Absolutely. These are fantastic points. Especially, I like the fact about being self-aware. I think that's such a crucial aspect. Unless you can get that right, it's very difficult to manage other things.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and so, there are a lot of people who are joining this domain of internal comms. So, what's your advice for them? How can they become really good at what they're doing? How can they make a difference? So, what's your advice for youngsters who are joining this domain?
Um, I think what I just mentioned is kind of what they need to also look at. But if I were to add to that, I would say that, one, be curious,
Hmm.
learn. My biggest learning happened in my first public relations job, which was
Hmm.
Edelman, and
Hmm.
worked on the Satyam crisis.
Okay.
So I had, I mean, it was trial by fire.
Hmm.
I learned so much about how we communicate and what are the right things to do, and there were lots of things I didn't know.
Hmm.
I learned during that process.
Hmm.
So being open minded, one of the things I find challenging these days is that everyone thinks they are the strategy owners and they know everything inside out.
Hmm.
Humble, know what you have, and
Hmm.
work towards making sure that you are promoting being curious and connecting the dots for people who are working with you. Seek out.
Hmm.
So the second bit is staying curious. Then the second bit is seeking advice and
Hmm.
mentorship.
Hmm.
The best in the game will already have all of the experience. You just need
Hmm.
to tap into their knowledge.
Right.
and gain from it, because everyone has, like we are going through COVID, people
Mm.
have research back when the the great influenza happened. What
Right.
lessons then? What are the lessons now? What can be
Mm.
there will be certain nuances to it,
Right.
but every aspect has been done in some form or fashion in the past.
Mm.
So don't completely ignore it that this is an absolutely new environment and we need to think from ground zero.
Mm.
That element of being able to seek that out, advice, is an important element. And be yourself.
Got
At
it.
the end of that, if you're not being true to yourself and you're trying to be someone else, it
Right.
will you will eventually have to let go of that facade at some point,
Right.
and it will fall apart quite quickly. So be yourself.
Fantastic. So right now, I mean, you alluded to the COVID-19 and the pandemic, what's happening. So, what is what's your take on what's going to change, what's going to stay the same with internal communications?
I mean, I touched upon the fact previously. During the COVID, I mean, the one thing that I have noticed is that, and if you look back a couple of months back last year, when the business roundtable happened for the first time, leaders, not just communicators, leaders of really global companies decided that purpose was as important as shareholders.
Mm.
While it was presented as both, only purpose is now important, if you relook at the actual declaration, it doesn't say
Mm.
that the other is not. It's
Mm.
a question of whether um, purpose is important
Mm.
and it is becoming more important. And
Got it.
therefore, uh, that being one element,
Mm.
getting into COVID has
Mm.
us that there has been there has been a rising level of trust
Mm.
that is being developed. This is a big opportunity to also do all the things that are right. This is the
Mm.
internal communicators to take center stage.
Mm.
Coupled with the fact around employee activism
Mm.
makes it an extremely important element moving
Mm.
forward
Mm.
to reset, reimagine,
Mm.
prioritize
Got it.
your plans for the future so that when we do come out of this, and we will,
Mm.
it's getting us stronger together,
Right.
but at the same time moving us forward in the direction that we need to be.
Got it.
And it seems all very easy, but when we speak like this, but it requires moving mountains.
Mm.
I I do that work, awareness
Mm-hmm.
to continue to do.
Got it. Got it. So, as we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you if you were to look back at your journey, if there was one aspect of internal communication that you'd like to change or do differently, what would that be?
I I I I have worked through. There's been an organic progression in my life, and I have always felt that internal communications are the best examples of active internal communications. Make sure that employees are the active cheerleaders and brand ambassadors.
Mm.
And the thing that I think always often muddies the water is who owns this function.
Right.
And I while I don't really have a response to that, I do think that Harry Truman's words ring true, which is when you don't talk about who gets the credit for it,
Mm.
things work amazingly well. So
Right.
my parting advice would be, don't look for glory. Keep doing the stuff. It'll come to you if you do it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Really, really, really nice speaking to you, Arnab. These are great insights and viewpoints which you have shared. Really appreciate it. I'm sure it's going to be of immense value to all our viewers. So thank you again for taking the time, Arnab.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
All right, just hold on.